Segment 1. Introduction and the quiet heroism of Irena Sendler. In the soft whispers of history, heroes emerge quietly, without fanfare. One such figure is Irena Sendler, a Polish social worker whose bravery during World War II gently echoes through the corridors of time. As a member of the Polish underground, she risked her life to smuggle approximately 2,500 Jewish children out of the Warsaw Ghetto, saving them from certain death. Irena meticulously documented their real identities, safely burying the lists under an apple tree, hopeful for a future reunion. Despite capture and torture, her quiet resilience never wavered, and she survived to reunite many children with their families. Born in 1910 in Warsaw, Irena grew up surrounded by an atmosphere of warmth and compassion. Her father, Stanisław Krzyżanowski, was a respected physician who demonstrated profound empathy and selflessness. Stanisław frequently treated patients who were poor or suffering, refusing payment and teaching his daughter the invaluable lesson that humanity and kindness are paramount virtues. His untimely death from typhus, contracted from his patients, deeply affected young Irena and left a lasting imprint on her spirit. From an early age, Irena was gently driven by a desire to alleviate suffering. Her choice of career, social work, reflected a natural extension of her upbringing and personal values. The soft-spoken yet determined young woman found her calling, working with Warsaw's social welfare department, providing assistance to the city's disadvantaged populations. As the shadow of war descended over Europe, her role transformed quietly into something far greater. When the Nazis occupied Poland in 1939, Jewish communities were systematically isolated, stripped of their rights, and confined within oppressive ghettos. Witnessing these injustices, Irena felt a gentle yet profound calling to resist. Using her official position, she quietly distributed food, medicine, and money to suffering Jewish families, fully aware that discovery meant certain death. By 1942, conditions in the Warsaw Ghetto had deteriorated drastically, compelling Irena to join Żegota, a clandestine resistance network dedicated to aiding persecuted Jews. Adopting the alias Jolanta, she orchestrated complex rescue operations with remarkable calm and ingenuity. Irena and her network employed creative methods to smuggle children safely out of the ghetto. Hidden compartments in vehicles, ambulances, suitcases, and even toolboxes became life-saving vessels. Babies were often sedated and carried gently, concealed within bundles of goods or tucked into boxes. Older children were discreetly coached to recite Catholic prayers and memorize carefully prepared new identities. Each successful rescue was quietly celebrated, but carried with it the heavy awareness of ongoing peril. Irena meticulously recorded every child's real name, alongside their new identities, carefully storing these records in glass jars buried beneath an apple tree in a trusted friend's garden. Her serene confidence and methodical planning demonstrated an extraordinary dedication to ensuring the children's identities and futures remained intact. In October 1943, Irena's quiet bravery was met with the harsh brutality of the Gestapo. Captured and subjected to relentless interrogation and severe torture, she endured this ordeal without betraying a single name or location. Her quiet courage was further exemplified when she narrowly escaped execution thanks to the intervention of colleagues who bribed a guard to secure her release. Undaunted by her harrowing experience, Irena continued her humanitarian mission discreetly until the war's end. After liberation, she painstakingly retrieved the hidden records and began the heartfelt task of reconnecting rescued children with surviving family members. Her quiet efforts brought hope and closure to many shattered lives, restoring fragments of happiness amidst widespread devastation. Throughout her later years, Irena modestly dismissed praise, emphasizing the collective effort and sacrifices made by countless unnamed heroes. She chose to live quietly, always remaining humble about her heroic actions. Her legacy only resurfaced years later, gradually earning recognition through various honors and awards, although she herself often shied away from the spotlight, preferring quiet acknowledgement. In 1965, Irena was honored as one of the righteous among the nations by Yad Vashem, Israel's Holocaust Remembrance Authority. Still, her story remained largely unknown internationally until the early 21st century, when a group of students rediscovered her remarkable journey, sparking worldwide interest and admiration. Even after gaining international recognition, Irena consistently expressed her belief that her actions were simply human obligations, gentle reminders that kindness and compassion should be universally innate values. She continued advocating for tolerance and understanding, softly yet persistently urging future generations to remember the lessons of history and to ensure such tragedies never occur again. Irena Sendler passed away in 2008, leaving behind an extraordinary yet quiet legacy of bravery, compassion and resilience. Her life story remains an enduring and comforting reminder that the quietest actions often speak the loudest. Her calm courage, woven gently through the tapestry of history, serves as an everlasting beacon of hope, compassion, and unwavering strength. Her work has since inspired books, documentaries, stage plays, and educational programs, helping generations understand the immense risk she took and the lives she saved. In 1999, a group of high school students from Uniontown, Kansas, created a play titled Life in a Jar, after uncovering her story through research. The play travelled internationally, and Irena herself expressed humble gratitude for the renewed attention, saying, "I only did what was normal. I could have done more." Her humility was not false modesty. It was an essential part of who she was, someone who believed that in times of darkness a light must be carried, no matter how small. In a world that was unravelling, she held firm to her principles of compassion and decency. It is worth reflecting on the logistical challenges she and her collaborators faced. Operating in secrecy, under surveillance, and without today's conveniences or digital coordination, they managed an underground network so tightly organised and so discreet that it continued for years without being entirely exposed. The coordination with Catholic orphanages, sympathetic families, and even nuns who took in Jewish children as their own reveals the depth of courage that spread beyond Irena herself. Moreover, the emotional toll of her work was immense. Every child taken from their family was both a rescue and a trauma. Many children were too young to understand, and many parents did not survive the Holocaust. Irena bore the emotional responsibility of carrying their names, their hopes, and their fates. She often remarked later in life that she carried sorrow more than pride. Some children never reconnected with surviving relatives. Others grew up never knowing their origins until much later. And yet, through these sorrows there was healing. Some of the rescued children, now adults, traced their pasts and paid tribute to the woman who saved them. Reunions took place, tears were shed, stories shared. These reconnections, though bittersweet, were threads of life mended by a woman who once dug into the earth to protect truth in a jar. Today, her legacy is a model for moral courage. In schools and universities, in memorials and museums, Irena Sendler's story is told not with sensationalism, but with quiet reverence. Her face, once nearly forgotten, now graces walls of remembrance and children's books alike. As you lie back, closing your eyes, let the story of Irena Sendler rest gently in your thoughts. Think of a garden with an apple tree. Beneath it, buried in the soil, are the names of children once marked for death but saved by the courage of a quiet woman. She did not seek glory. She only chose to act, and in doing so, lit a candle that has never gone out. Let that candlelight calm your thoughts. Let her quiet bravery soothe your spirit. Let sleep take you gently, knowing that even in the darkest hours of history, there were those who chose to save, to protect, and to hope. Segment 2. Witold Pilecki, Bravery Behind Enemy Lines. In the annals of quiet courage, few stories shine with the same understated brilliance as that of Witold Pilecki. A name not often found in the pages of common history books, his story unfolds like a solemn yet resolute whisper amid the roar of war. A man of deep conviction and extraordinary bravery, Pilecki volunteered to do what no one else dared, become a prisoner at Auschwitz in order to bear witness to the horrors within and organize resistance from the inside. Born in 1901 in the village of Owoniek in the Russian Empire, Pilecki was raised in a patriotic Polish family. Poland during his youth was partitioned and occupied by foreign powers. These circumstances stirred within him a quiet, enduring sense of duty to his homeland. As a young man, he served with valor in the Polish-Soviet War of 1919 to 1921. His early military service, marked by courage and calm under fire, would set the tone for the rest of his life. After the war, Witold lived a peaceful life, raising a family and working on his estate. Yet when Nazi Germany invaded Poland in 1939, peace became a distant memory. Pilecki co-founded the secret Polish Army, one of the first resistance groups in Nazi-occupied Poland. But his most remarkable act was still ahead of him, a mission he undertook not for recognition but for the sake of truth. In 1940, with Nazi terror escalating and reports of unspeakable atrocities emerging, Pilecki proposed an almost unimaginable plan to allow himself to be captured and sent to Auschwitz. His aim was to gather intelligence, create a resistance movement within the camp, and alert the outside world to the realities of the Holocaust. Pilecki executed his plan with calculated calm. He intentionally got arrested during a Gestapo raid, and soon he found himself transported to Auschwitz, the most notorious Nazi concentration camp. Within this horrific environment, he demonstrated extraordinary courage and organizational ability. Quietly, he began to build an underground resistance network, subtly recruiting fellow prisoners and carefully gathering crucial intelligence. Life in Auschwitz was relentlessly brutal. Prisoners faced daily terror, violence, starvation, and forced labor. Pilecki witnessed indescribable atrocities, documenting them meticulously in secret reports. His careful observations became some of the earliest detailed accounts of the horrors unfolding inside Auschwitz. He smuggled these reports out through prisoners who managed to escape, providing invaluable information to the Allies and the Polish resistance. Within the confines of the camp, Pilecki's quiet resolve became a beacon of hope. He organized clandestine meetings, coordinated supply routes, and even planned escapes. His network provided moral support and essential resources, helping prisoners endure the daily horrors. The risks he took were enormous. Any suspicion could mean instant death. Yet Pilecki persisted, driven by his deep sense of duty and compassion. After nearly 3 years of harrowing imprisonment, Pilecki recognized the urgent need to inform the world directly about Auschwitz. In April 1943, he daringly escaped from the camp, navigating treacherous territory to return safely to Warsaw. There, he prepared comprehensive reports detailing his experiences and the atrocities he had witnessed. These reports provided crucial evidence of Nazi crimes and were among the first detailed accounts received by Allied governments. Despite his efforts, Pilecki's warnings about Auschwitz initially went unheeded, yet he remained steadfast. Rather than retreating into safety, he continued his resistance work, joining the Warsaw Uprising in 1944. Once again, his bravery shone through as he fought valiantly in desperate urban warfare against Nazi occupation. After the war, Poland fell under Soviet control, and Pilecki faced a new enemy. His dedication to a free and independent Poland placed him at odds with the Soviet-imposed regime. In 1947, the Polish communist authorities arrested him, accusing him falsely of espionage and treason. He was subjected to severe torture and a sham trial, yet he maintained dignity and calm composure throughout. In May 1948, Witold Pilecki was executed, his heroism buried by the oppressive regime he had fought so courageously against. His story remained hidden for decades, overshadowed by the politics of the Cold War. Only after the fall of communism in Eastern Europe did his remarkable courage come to widespread attention. Today, Pilecki's quiet bravery is recognized globally, not only as a heroic Polish patriot, but as a universal symbol of human dignity and courage under unimaginable circumstances. His story teaches us about resilience, sacrifice, and the profound strength of quiet courage. In reflecting on Pilecki's life, one cannot help but admire the calm clarity with which he made his decisions. There was no glory in his mission, only danger. He knew that stepping into Auschwitz meant stepping into the heart of darkness. And yet, he did it, not for himself, but for others. His mission was not to survive, but to serve. The logistics of surviving in Auschwitz while conducting intelligence work were staggering. Pilecki learned to communicate in code, passing notes in hollowed-out tools, in food containers, or through messengers who risked their lives to deliver his reports. These reports included information on the mass exterminations, gas chambers, brutal experiments, and the steady, silent disappearance of hundreds each day. He also smuggled out names of SS officers, numbers of transports, and estimates of the dead. This information, now critical to Holocaust history, was at the time dismissed by many in the West as too horrific to be real, and yet Pilecki had seen it. He had lived it. Back in Warsaw, after his escape, he was described as pale and gaunt, barely recognizable, but his mind was sharp. His mission resumed immediately. He didn't rest. He didn't celebrate. He returned to the shadows and continued to resist. His capture by the communists was, in many ways, more tragic. After having risked everything to report the truth, he was branded a traitor by the very authorities that now rule Poland. At his show trial, he was denied legal counsel and sentenced before evidence could even be presented. While in prison, Pilecki endured isolation and torture, but even there, fellow inmates reported that he maintained a calm strength. He helped others remain strong, encouraged silence under duress, and offered quiet words of hope. Before his execution, he is reported to have said that compared to Auschwitz, his imprisonment by the communists was a trifle. Those words capture both his inner strength and the horrors he had endured. In 1990, his name was cleared, and he was posthumously awarded Poland's highest honours. Memorials were erected. His face, once erased from official memory, was placed on stamps, books, and classroom walls. His story reminds us that true bravery is often quiet. It does not scream. It does not boast. It simply acts. As your eyes grow heavier and your breath slows, let the story of Witold Pilecki settle over you like a soft blanket. Let his quiet determination remind you that even in the harshest conditions, even in a world of walls and wire, a single voice, steady and brave, can make a difference. Sleep peacefully now, cradled in the truth that history holds heroes like Pilecki in its gentle embrace, their sacrifices remembered, their courage eternal. Segment 3, Noor Inayat Khan, the Quiet Spy. In the shadows of World War II emerged another quiet yet fiercely resilient hero, Noor Inayat Khan. Born on January 1st, 1914 in Moscow, Noor's life was a gentle blend of serenity and bravery. Her father, Hazrat Inayat Khan, was a respected Sufi spiritual leader, a man of profound wisdom and calm strength. Noor inherited from her father not only a gentle temperament, but also a deep sense of compassion and responsibility toward humanity. Her family relocated often during her childhood, finally settling in France where Noor's creative spirit flourished. A talented writer, poet and musician, Noor led a tranquil, contemplative life. Her writings often reflected themes of unity, peace and gentle perseverance, qualities that later shaped her brave decisions during wartime. When war broke out, Noor faced an agonizing choice. Raised on principles of non-violence and compassion, she nonetheless felt compelled to contribute actively to the fight against tyranny. Driven by a quiet resolve, Noor joined the British Women's Auxiliary Air Force, WAAF, in 1940. Her Her calm demeanour and fluency in multiple languages quickly caught the attention of British intelligence, who saw her potential as a covert operative. In 1943, Noor was recruited by the Special Operations Executive, SOE, tasked with dangerous espionage missions in Nazi-occupied France. With gentle courage, she accepted her new identity, Madeleine, a radio operator. Noor's training was rigorous, testing not only her technical skills but also her emotional strength and endurance. Despite initial doubts about her suitability for espionage due to her sensitive nature, Noor quietly persisted, demonstrating resilience and determination that surprised even her skeptics. Deployed to Paris, Noor became the first female wireless operator sent by the British into occupied France. Her mission was perilous. Wireless operators were critical lifelines for resistance efforts, yet they faced constant danger of detection by the Gestapo's sophisticated tracking systems. Noor transmitted vital intelligence from occupied France back to Britain, quietly orchestrating acts of sabotage and aiding resistance operations. Almost immediately after her arrival, the Gestapo began arresting her network members. Soon, Noor was alone, the only remaining wireless operator in Paris. Despite immense danger and isolation, she remained quietly resolute, continuously evading capture and maintaining radio contact. She frequently changed her locations, moving silently and cautiously through Paris, never allowing fear or exhaustion to break her gentle determination. Noor's broadcasts were invaluable, providing crucial intelligence and maintaining essential communication lines. Yet, each transmission risked her capture. She lived in constant danger, always prepared to dismantle her equipment at a moment's notice, calmly maintaining her composure even when Gestapo agents came dangerously close. Her bravery endured for 4 months, far surpassing the typical life expectancy of agents in her role. Her supervisors marvelled at her resilience, unaware of the quiet yet fierce internal battles she faced daily. Noor's inner strength and calm dedication kept resistance networks alive during critical moments of the war. Ultimately, betrayal led to Noor's capture in October 1943. Even in captivity, her quiet dignity remained unbroken. Imprisoned first in Paris, then in Germany, Noor refused to divulge any information despite intense interrogation and severe mistreatment. Her gentle courage became legendary among her captors and fellow prisoners, earning her profound respect even from those who opposed her. Transferred to Dachau concentration camp, Noor faced her final days with serene courage. Witnesses recount her calm composure, her quiet dignity, even in the face of imminent execution. On September 13, 1944, Noor Inayat Khan was executed, her final moments reflecting the gentle bravery that defined her life. Posthumously awarded the George Cross and the French Croix de Guerre, Noor's legacy quietly reminds the world of the strength found in compassion, perseverance, and peaceful resolve. Her story gently echoes through history, a testament to quiet heroism and the profound impact one person can make in the darkest of times. Her memory lives on in many quiet corners of the world. A statue of Noor stands in Gordon Square Gardens in London, poised, peaceful, and resolute. Schoolchildren visit to learn about her story, often moved to tears by her bravery. Memorials bear her name in both Britain and France, and her story is told in classrooms, museums, and books dedicated to the unseen architects of freedom. To those who knew her, Noor was not a soldier in the traditional sense. She carried no weapon. She waged no war of aggression. Her tools were silence, patience, and the unwavering transmission of truth across enemy lines. Her mission was communication, a lifeline connecting a suffering world to those still willing to fight for its freedom. Despite being small in stature and soft in voice, Her presence in history is vast. She was, in the truest sense, a resistance fighter, not by brawn, but by the strength of her will and the clarity of her purpose. It is important to understand the emotional toll such a mission would have taken. Noor was constantly hunted, unable to rest for more than a few hours, living under a cloud of dread. Every knock on the door, every sudden footstep could signal her capture, and yet she endured, not with anger, not with vengeance, but with a gentle focus on her mission, on the people depending on her silent signal. Even in captivity, Noor attempted escape twice. Her determination never faded. She never gave up information. She never broke under pressure. When finally moved to solitary confinement, she endured months of silence, never revealing a single name. Those who survived Dachau described Noor's final moments with quiet awe. She walked to her execution without faltering. Her last word, as remembered by a witness, was a single word spoken clearly and calmly. Liberté. Freedom. There is something beautifully haunting in that word, a final whisper from a woman who had spent her life devoted to freedom. Noor's life ended in the silence of a prison courtyard, but her legacy continues to speak loudly, softly, everywhere. Let her memory guide you gently into rest. Let the quiet pulse of her bravery steady your breath. You are safe now. Let go. Sleep, knowing the world has been protected by those like Noor, whose silence was louder than thunder, whose peace was stronger than violence. Segment 4. Mary Seacole, Healing in the Shadows. In the vast narrative of wartime care and compassion, the name Florence Nightingale often shines brightly. Yet quietly, in the soft shadows of history, another healer moved with just as much bravery, grace and determination, Mary Seacole. Her name may not ring as familiar, but her legacy is one of warmth, grit and fierce kindness in a world torn by conflict. Mary Seacole was born in 1805 in Kingston, Jamaica, to a Scottish father and a Jamaican mother. Her mother was a traditional healer who ran a boarding house for invalid soldiers, and it was here that Mary first learned the medicinal arts. The lessons of herbal remedies, patient care, and steady resolve were sown into her from a young age. As a mixed-race woman living in a deeply prejudiced world, Mary encountered barriers her entire life, but she met them not with bitterness, but with determination and quiet pride. Her early life was filled with movement and learning. Mary travelled to England, the Caribbean, and even Panama, providing care during cholera and yellow fever outbreaks. Her nursing skills were recognised and respected by many, soldiers, sailors and civilians alike. She had a gift for creating calm in the middle of chaos, for offering comfort in moments of despair. These qualities would define her legacy in the years to come. When the Crimean War broke out in 1853, Mary felt a deep pull to offer her services. She travelled to England and applied to join Florence Nightingale's nursing corps. Despite her experience and recommendations, she was turned away, likely due to racial prejudice. Undeterred, Mary used her own savings to travel to the war front. Alone and uninvited, she arrived in Crimea determined to help. What she built there came to be known as the British Hotel, a warm, welcoming respite just behind the lines, where wounded and weary soldiers could rest, eat, and recover. Unlike the more structured hospitals, Mary's establishment was personal. She moved among the men, bandaging wounds, preparing meals, offering both medicine and conversation. She was often found on the battlefield itself, tending to the injured with calm efficiency and deep compassion. Soldiers came to love and rely on her. They called her Mother Seacole, and her presence was a source of comfort amid the brutality of war. Her remedies combined traditional Jamaican medicine with European techniques. and her results spoke for themselves. She had a healer's intuition, a mother's touch, and a warrior's endurance. Mary's care extended far beyond medicine. She listened to the fears of dying men, wrote letters to their families, and provided warmth when the cold world of war offered none. Her hospitality was legendary. Many officers and soldiers alike came to her for advice, support, or simply a moment of peace. And yet, when the war ended, Mary returned to England quietly, without the fanfare or honours that others received. Her finances depleted, she lived modestly, but the soldiers she had served had not forgotten her. They raised funds on her behalf and organised public celebrations of her work. Eventually, her memoirs, titled Wonderful Adventures of Mrs. Seacole in Many Lands, were published, bringing her story to a wider audience. Still, her legacy faded into relative obscurity over time. It wasn't until many decades later that her contributions began to receive the recognition they deserved. Statues and scholarships have since been established in her honour. Today, Mary Seacole is remembered not only as a nurse, but as a symbol of perseverance, equality, and the quiet strength of compassionate service. Her techniques were not just functional, but intuitive, rooted in the traditional knowledge of Caribbean herbalism, blended with European medical practices she had observed. She often used remedies such as mustard plasters, herbal infusions, and poultices made from native plants. Her deep understanding of these remedies was not based in formal medical training, but in years of hands-on experience, trial, and compassion. More than once, she ventured onto battlefields under fire, carrying bandages, water, and medicine in her apron. Soldiers reported seeing her walking calmly through smoke and chaos, fearless, focused on care. In a time when women were rarely seen at the front lines, let alone women of colour, her very presence was an act of defiance, a gentle rebellion against expectation. Mary also provided food when rations ran low. She baked bread, stewed meats, and created hearty meals, often from very little, reminding soldiers of home. For those close to death, her voice was often the last they heard, speaking in soft tones, offering prayers, stories, or silence when needed. The British Hotel served not only the injured, but also the homesick, the hungry, and the heartsick. Officers and soldiers alike would visit for advice or comfort. Her doors were open to all, regardless of rank, and her smile was remembered long after the war ended. Following the war, when she faced poverty and obscurity, she did not complain. She did not become bitter. Instead, she held her memories close and continued to help in whatever small ways she could. When support finally arrived, it was because of the voices of those she had healed, men who had seen firsthand the strength in her kindness. In recent years, historians have restored Mary's rightful place alongside other figures of wartime heroism. The Royal College of Nursing now honours her memory. Schools teach her story. Plays and books recount her journey from the shores of Jamaica to the warfields of Crimea. Despite her accomplishments, Mary Seacole was not always welcomed into the historical canon with open arms. For decades, her contributions were downplayed, lost beneath the fame of others. But now, the ripples of her healing work stretch into the present. Her life serves as a powerful example of how compassion, courage, and cultural fusion can create transformative impact in the most trying of circumstances. The story of Mary Seacole is also a window into a broader truth, that many of history's heroes have laboured in silence, their stories buried beneath layers of time, prejudice, or oversight. Her life invites us to reflect on the others like her, the caregivers, medics, and nurses whose names we do not know, but whose legacies continue in every life they touched. As you rest your head tonight, let your thoughts drift to a simple wooden building by the Black Sea. Imagine warm meals, gentle voices, and hands that bring healing. Picture Mary Seacole moving between beds, her footsteps sure, her voice soft. her presence a source of hope. Let her memory wrap around you like a warm blanket. Let the soothing presence of Mary Seacole, the healer in the shadows, calm your thoughts and ease your breath. In a world that often overlooks quiet heroism, she stood tall, not through speeches or medals, but through every gentle hand she laid on a wounded soldier, every meal she served, every moment she gave. Sleep now in the peace her story provides. And remember, there are heroes who walk quietly through history, leaving behind them not parades or monuments, but comfort, healing, and the gentle memory of care. Segment 5. The Silent Courage of Hugh Thompson Jr., A Helicopter, a Massacre, and a Stand for Humanity. In the thick jungles of Vietnam, amid the chaos and confusion of a controversial war, one man made a quiet yet unwavering decision that would reverberate through military history and human conscience alike. His name was Hugh Clowers Thompson Jr., and he was not a general nor a politician. He was a 24-year-old helicopter pilot from Georgia who made the extraordinary choice to protect civilians at the risk of his own life during one of the darkest moments of the Vietnam War, the My Lai massacre. Born in 1943 in Atlanta, Georgia, Thompson grew up in a world filled with Southern tradition and the lingering shadows of segregation. His childhood was marked by discipline, respect for duty, and an ingrained sense of right and wrong. He enlisted in the US Navy in 1961 and later joined the US Army, training as a helicopter pilot. By 1968, Thompson was deployed to Vietnam, flying reconnaissance missions in his Hiller OH-23 Raven. These missions were dangerous and exhausting, flying low over jungle canopies, dodging enemy fire, and constantly scanning the terrain for both threats and signs of American troops in distress. He and his small crew, including crew chief Glenn Andriotta and Dr. Gunner Lawrence Colburn, had grown used to the surreal horror of war. But nothing could prepare them for what they would witness on March 16, 1968, in the Vietnamese hamlet of My Lai. That morning, Thompson's helicopter hovered above what was supposed to be a Viet Cong stronghold. Instead, what he saw on the ground were unarmed civilians, mostly women, children, and the elderly, being rounded up, beaten, and executed by US soldiers. Bodies littered irrigation ditches, houses burned. Screams rose into the jungle air. Thompson was horrified. Initially unsure of what he was witnessing, he continued to circle. But as the reality became undeniable, that fellow American soldiers were massacring villagers, he made a decision that defied both military expectation and personal safety. Thompson landed his helicopter between the soldiers and a group of hiding civilians. Over the radio, he instructed his door gunners to open fire on any American troops who attempted to harm the villagers. He then called in additional helicopters to evacuate the survivors, shielding them with his own aircraft and body. In the minutes that followed, Thompson personally confronted Lieutenant William Calley, the officer in charge of Charlie Company, whose orders had catalyzed the massacre. The exchange was terse and tense. Thompson insisted the killing stop. He later reported the entire atrocity to his superiors, filing one of the first eyewitness accounts of the massacre. Though his immediate actions saved at least a dozen civilians, Thompson's moral stand came at a price. Rather than being lauded as a hero, he was met with disdain by many within the military. He received death threats. Fellow officers and politicians considered him a traitor. The army attempted to bury his report, and for over a year, the truth of My Lai remained obscured. When investigative journalist Seymour Hersh broke the story to the public in late 1969, outrage erupted. The My Lai massacre, where over 500 civilians were killed, became a symbol of the war's moral quagmire. Thompson was called to testify before Congress. His quiet voice recounted the horror with unwavering clarity and ethical conviction. It took decades for his heroism to be formally recognized. In 1998, Thompson, Andriotta, posthumously, and Colburn were awarded the Soldier's Medal, the highest US military honor for bravery not involving direct conflict with an enemy. At the ceremony, former Army Chief of Staff General Hugh Shelton stated, "It's clear to me that they acted with extraordinary courage and personal integrity. They set the standard for all soldiers." Thompson's later years were marked by humility and advocacy. He visited schools and spoke to cadets, often emphasizing the importance of ethical decision-making in combat. He maintained contact with survivors of My Lai and even returned to the village in 1998, where he was welcomed with tears and gratitude. He often said he was just doing his job, but those who know the story understand that it was far more than that. Thompson's decision to intervene, to protect the innocent, and to report the truth required a moral courage as profound as any battlefield heroism. Hugh Thompson Jr. passed away in 2006, and his funeral was attended by military and civilian figures alike. Among the floral tributes were notes from Vietnamese villagers who owed their lives to the young pilot who chose humanity over orders. Yet the impact of his choice stretched beyond that single day in 1968. Over time, military academies began including his story in their curriculum, not just as an anecdote, but as a case study in ethical leadership. Young soldiers in training were asked, "What would you have done? Could you have stopped the massacre? Would you have spoken up?" Thompson's decision served as a quiet rebuke to blind obedience. It reminded the military and the world that loyalty must never override morality. In a war defined by murky objectives and shifting battle lines, his clarity of thought was like a compass, pointing firmly toward justice. His crewmates were also deeply affected. Lawrence Colburn would later speak of that day with solemn reverence, crediting Thompson with shaping his understanding of courage and conscience. Glenn Andriotta, who was killed in action only days later, was posthumously honoured for his role. Their bond, formed in the crucible of war, was unbreakable. In 2001, at a symposium on military ethics, a young cadet stood up after Thompson spoke and said, "Sir, I hope I can be half the soldier you are." Thompson, ever modest, smiled and replied, "Just be the kind of person who remembers the people who can't speak for themselves." As the years passed, Thompson was invited to more public forums, and his story became part of broader conversations about whistleblowing, conscience, and moral responsibility. His name was often invoked alongside others who had stood against wrongdoing, from Daniel Ellsberg to Edward Snowden, yet Thompson had not leaked documents or spoken out through the media. He had acted directly and decisively in the moment of crisis. That difference gave his story an almost mythic quality, the pilot who landed in a massacre and stopped it. But Thompson never saw himself as a myth. He lived quietly, loved his family, mentored young soldiers, and carried the memories of that day with a burdened grace. Those who knew him best described him as a gentle man, a thoughtful man, a man who would rather have been remembered for his kindness than his courage. And maybe that is what made him a hero. As you drift into sleep, let your mind wander to the gentle thrum of helicopter blades cutting through humid air. Imagine the calm gaze of a young pilot scanning a village not for enemies, but for innocents. Hear his voice over the radio, clear and calm, commanding his crew to protect life, not end it. Sleep peacefully now, knowing that in the chaos of war, there are still those who choose compassion. Heroes like Hugh Thompson Jr., whose quiet actions saved lives and, in doing so, restored a measure of humanity to a dark chapter of history. Segment 6. The servant struggle. Chains, chores, and constant demands. In the grand palaces and humble households of history, behind every royal feast and noble gathering, There were those who laboured silently, those whose stories were rarely written, but whose lives shaped the very rhythm of civilization. These were the servants, the cooks and cleaners, the butlers and maids, the enslaved and indentured, who toiled in the background. Their struggles were real, their burdens heavy, and their contributions immense. From ancient Rome to Victorian England, the role of the servant was omnipresent. Servants were the silent machinery of empires, rising before dawn and retiring long after the household slept. Their days were consumed by endless tasks: polishing, scrubbing, sewing, fetching and bowing. Often overlooked, they formed the skeletal structure of aristocratic life, expected to be invisible yet indispensable. In ancient Greece, household slaves performed nearly all domestic functions. In the sprawling homes of Athens, female slaves, sometimes captured in war or sold into bondage, would prepare meals, tend fires, and care for children not their own. In Rome, wealthy patricians flaunted their status through the size and specialization of their domestic staff. Some had slaves whose sole purpose was to organize their master's wardrobe. Others were tasked with fanning guests or singing softly during meals. But behind the luxurious facades, the conditions were often brutal. A single mistake could mean a beating, or worse. The Middle Ages brought new forms of servitude. Serfs, bound to the land, toiled for lords in manor houses and fields, their lives controlled by unwritten laws and generational expectation. Life was hard. Work began at sunrise and rarely ceased. They swept the halls, hauled firewood, and milked livestock. They were required to bow in silence, speak only when spoken to, and endure humiliation as a daily ritual. In royal courts, the lines between prestige and suffering blurred. Court servants were dressed finely, expected to maintain composure, yet subject to whims that could change their fate in a moment. Pages might be beaten for a scuffed boot. Maids dismissed for an accidental spill. Their smiles were often forced, their dignity tucked away with their plain uniforms. And then there were the enslaved servants, those trafficked from Africa to Europe, the Middle East, and the Americas. Their bondage was absolute. They cooked meals they would never eat, cleaned homes they could not rest in, and raised children who would grow up to inherit the system that oppressed them. In the American South, plantation households relied on enslaved women to nurse infants, sew clothes, and endure unspeakable abuses while maintaining the illusion of order and civility. Yet even in these conditions, resilience bloomed. Stories of quiet defiance, of secret literacy, of passing down songs and recipes and prayers. These were the silent rebellions of the servant class. Through whispered lullabies and carefully folded linens, they preserved cultures, upheld families, and passed down wisdom in spite of oppression. In Victorian England, being in service became a codified profession. Homes had hierarchies within hierarchies. The butler reigned over the pantry, the housekeeper ruled the bedrooms. Beneath them, footmen, chambermaids, scullery maids, and kitchen boys lived lives of unrelenting structure. Bells rang, orders flowed, and behind every grand dinner was a chorus of unseen hands. Despite the oppression and rigid expectations, bonds formed in the kitchens and servant quarters. Older servants mentored the young, jokes were shared over peeled potatoes, quiet romances bloomed by candlelight in corridors. This hidden world pulsed with its own sense of pride and survival. In France, domestic service during the Belle Époque became a peculiar combination of glamour and grind. While servants in lavish Parisian townhomes were surrounded by art and luxury, they slept in cramped attic quarters, worked 16-hour days, and were often forbidden from speaking directly to the family. Still, many remained for decades, quietly witnessing history through the keyholes of wealth. In Asia, systems of household servitude carried different cultural tones. In China's imperial court, eunuchs and palace maids formed powerful internal hierarchies. In India, domestic workers existed in both royal palaces and colonial homes, often simultaneously revered and marginalized. Stories passed down through oral traditions tell of cooks who saved nobles from poisonings, of nannies who raised emperors with a firmer hand than their own mothers. In Japan, the okasan, or housekeeper, was central to the family unit, managing not just cleaning and food, but the social rhythms of the home. Their presence was enduring, their judgment valued, and yet they were rarely part of the family photos, forever positioned just outside the frame. In the Caribbean, African descendants continued traditions of working in-house, inheriting roles established under slavery and colonialism. Women became domestic pillars in homes they didn't own, often caring for children whose parents barely spoke to them. Still, these women passed on stories of ancestry and pride, threading dignity into every task, every dish, every folded shirt. In Latin America, domestic service has persisted across generations. In cities like Rio de Janeiro or Buenos Aires, young women left rural villages to work as live-in maids, sent far from their homes, speaking little, learning to navigate elite etiquette while silently suppressing their own dreams. Even in the 20th century, during World War I and II, servants were often drafted into roles beyond their calling. Maids became nurses. Gardeners were turned into stretcher-bearers. But still, at night, they returned to polish boots, to scrub halls, to keep the war machine functioning behind closed doors. In some of these stories, we see hope. There were households where servants were treated with kindness, where trust was mutual, where children grew to love their caregivers as second parents. There were families who educated their staff, who included them in family events, who defied the norm and offered respect. But for every one of those stories, there are a dozen more of injustice, of exhaustion without thanks, of exploitation, of stolen youth and invisible labour. Their pain may have been silent, but it was not small. They witnessed secrets, consoled crying children, and prepared rooms for dying parents. They bore witness to life's most private moments, often with deep care, and just as often with no recognition. They were the hands that steadied civilization, quiet, uncelebrated, but essential. Their stories may not fill textbooks or headline monuments, but they whisper through the halls of history, soft, steady echoes of strength, service, and survival. As sleep drapes itself over your thoughts, picture the life of one such servant, rising in darkness, working in silence, enduring with grace. Let the quiet dignity of their journey soften your breath and calm your mind. Sleep now, in honour of those whose labour allowed the world to move forward, those who gave without fanfare, who loved without recognition, and whose legacy is carved not in stone but in the lives they touched, one quiet task at a time.